Alright, so let's start some painting. So the first thing I want to do is I have my layer here. I'm going to import my images like so, and we're going to be focusing on these three images here that I've graded. Usually I have a bit more photographs that I've graded and are prepped to paint, but for this demo purpose I'm just going to show you how I've covered the face. You can, with these three images, you can cover pretty much all of the face. And once you understand my methodology behind that, it's the same process for doing details on the neck and the lips and stuff like that. So I'm just going to go through the general idea of things, and you'll get the idea once I finish. So I'm going to treat this method just like I used to in the olden days when I was painting with body paint in Photoshop and even deep paint in Photoshop. I'm going to be painting these projections in the separate layers, so I have better control later on when I want to merge them all together at the end. So before, in like body paint, I send a camera projection to Photoshop, paint on it, send them back, and then bring it into a master PSD and put them in layers and then blend them and then merge them together. So I'm essentially going to do the same thing, but it's all within one program, which is really cool. So I have my paint layer selected, so that's what I want. I'm going to hide my palettes, and then I'm going to bring in my image, like so. So I can paint from this distance here, like so, and cover the entire face, which is fine and dandy. Like that. I can warp some stuff into place. Like so. I'm not going to worry too much about the eyebrows at this point because I'm going to paint those in later separately. But just trying to get the eyes into place. The nose. The lips. So I can do this from this distance, which is fine. However, let's break that down. The problem is you have to remember your paint buffer, and this paint buffer is only set to 4K. So I'm not utilizing the best kind of resolution that I can get because I'm painting from afar. I'm getting full coverage, which is nice, but it's not ideal. So whenever I'm projecting front, side, quarter, side, whatever, I'm going to leave this as a test. Whenever I'm doing my projections, I try to stay close. I'm going to turn this one off. So when I create a new layer, it creates it on a transparent background, so there's nothing in it. But I want to fill this, so I have my fill color set to 50% gray. Just like in the previous version, you just right-click, fill paint, foreground. Sorry, that went off the screen. I forgot that I have a capture region here, so it cuts it off. But I can just go to patches and fill foreground. Same thing. That might have gotten cut off too. Yeah, so if in this drag down there's this thing called fill foreground, it kind of gets cut off by the capture region. But this is what I want, so it's on top. I don't want it to be on transparent. Anyway, back to the painting. So when I'm painting the front projection like so, I'm going to try to get as close as I can to certain regions so I can really take advantage of the resolution of this image, like so. And I like to use this brush, the Stormy brush, in the organic brushes. I just find it's got a really nice edge to it, and it's a hard edge. As you can see in the new version, it has a kind of a white outline to the paintbrush icon, so you can really tell what kind of paintbrush it is. I'm indifferent. It's it's kind of cool. So from here, I'm just going to worry about some of the major features on the face. try to just block in the flat areas that are perpendicular to camera. And I'm going to kind of leave the eyes out at this point because I'm going to do a separate pass on those later. But for now, I'm just trying to get the big, broad areas of the face. The cheeks, high cheekbones, the nose, at least the front of the nose, and then some of the forehead. So what I'm doing is I'm taking advantage of the real estate in the paint buffer. Again, I'm not worrying about the eyebrows. They're kind of off scale, but I'll fix that later. So I'm going to project that. So as you can see, if I were to switch back and forth, there's a pretty big difference in terms of resolution between these images. And that's going to be really nice in the end, like so. So be wary of your paint buffer when you're painting and projecting through, because you want to make sure that you're taking advantage of as much real estate as possible with the resolution of the image. So I'm going to actually just notice that I missed some spots. On the face. So you're definitely going to flat shaded to be sure that you've got everything. There we go. That's better. Okay. So moving on, I'm going to move on to the forehead and just block in some of this forehead right here. Again, at this point, it's very gestural. The whole key to this beginning stage of dropping things in is to get some nice even coverage of your images. I'm still maintaining this front projection as well, like so. And I'm going to bake that down. Let's move to the lips. Fortunately, these lips are very similar. Stephen didn't model this to match this model here that they photographed, so it was kind of serendipitous. But these lips match up pretty closely, which makes my life a little easier. Again, I'm not worrying about this edge here because I'm going to paint that out later. Just getting some coverage of the front. You see this is getting cut off here. It's because my paint buffer doesn't extend. So I'm going to change this to 1.95 to 1 and leave it as so. Unfortunately, it screws up my painting, so I'm going to do this over again real quick. I'm just going to lay this in. So happy with this. I'm going to take my warp tool. I really love the warp tool in Mari because it doesn't degrade the image after you warp it like in Photoshop, which has always been a pain for me. Just going to nudge it in the right place, like so. Need a little bit more nudging here. And then I'm going to clean up this section down here. Cool. I'm going to bake that. So we're getting some really good coverage at the front. If I go to flat shaded, because we graded these images pretty well, you're not getting a lot of darkening on the sides. There's a little bit, and you can see it in the forehead here, but that's okay because we're going to clean that up with those quarter projections of those other photos. So I'm going to go back and quickly finish off the chin. Like so. Some really nice coverage, and often I'll just fudge things into place on edges like this just so I can fill it out because it's really nice high-res detail that I can just keep running with. There we go. So now let's dive into the eyes. Now, we have these eyelashes that are in the way. Typically, I paint these out before I project, so I can go into Photoshop and just, it's a bit of a manual process, but I very gently and delicately paint these eyelashes out. So I recommend that you guys do that, but for this demo, I'm just worrying about projecting the broad strokes. So we're going to leave that be. I'm going to take these eyes and lock them just like before in previous versions so we don't get any paint on them. And I'm just going to lay down some color. Like so. Now this eyelid doesn't exactly match up, so we're going to kind of blend that into place with our handy warp tool. And then gently paint this back in. So there's a bit of a back and forth process with areas like this. We're just delicately moving things into place and then painting them. So that feels pretty good to me. I may do some further refinements in the future, but I'll leave that as is for now. So there's that eye. Let's move into the other eye. And I'm being very cautious about keeping my projection front on, just so it makes my life a little bit easier when I'm painting these details in. That is not that, a little bit bigger, so let's get that in place a bit better. Let's get these details to read. Like so. Let's move this eye down a bit. The warp tool is very, very powerful. It's one of my favorite things to do when I'm doing projections of human faces. It's super handy. Like so. Project that in. And yeah, I'm pretty happy with this front, except the eyebrows. So for now, let's just paint those eyebrows out because I want to place them separately, and I also want to paint them on a completely separate layer, so it's easier to extract for doing displacements and spec maps. So what I'm going to do is, with some nice clean area of the forehead, I'm going to just roughly paint this out, like so. Do that on the other side as well. There we go. Nice creepy, no eyebrows front projection. So as you can see, there's some darkness coming in here. There's some weird saturation. That's okay. We're going to leave that for now because we can fix that after the fact. The whole point right now is just to get good coverage on everything, and then we'll clean up, rebalance things later. So I'm really happy with this front projection. I'm going to stop recording now, and in the next recording we're going to move on into the side projections.